Hello and welcome to Northern Nightmares, your home for nightmarish stories throughout Canada and beyond. I'm your host Andrew, and today we're going to be exploring another region surrounded by mystery. If you remember episode 4, we took a journey to the Nahanni National Reserve. Well, this will be a similar vibe. However, this region, I would say, has a larger reputation than the Nahanni. This region spans over 13 states, 423 counties, and even crosses the border into Canada, to the province of Quebec, and even into Labrador. This story is extremely broad of lore, with the likes of folklore, urban legends, and yes, even cryptids. So I'm going to do my best to cover the majority of these claims, making sure you know what you're up against if you ever decide to check this place out. Now I know I've mentioned this region spans into Canada, but I won't be talking too much of that, but I'll be covering the main sections that are located in the States. A lot of the lore I have today takes place down there, and I think some of this you may have heard before. So grab your hiking gear and come along with me as we explore the great Appalachian region. If you were to look up a map of Appalachia, you may see a few different variations. That's because it's often debated of what's really considered part of the region and what's not. For example, the mountain and forest range spans into Canada, into Quebec, and even up to Newfoundland and Labrador. It also dips into my home of Nova Scotia and the neighboring province of New Brunswick. The Appalachian Regional Commission, or ARC for short, considers it a part of the U.S. Whichever side you believe, I think both statements are true. However, for this tale, I'm going to be covering the region and many claims that span over the many states. Besides this, just being a forest mountain area, Appalachia also has a deep cultural roots with indigenous and non-indigenous history in the U.S. There's a deep pride for people that consider themselves Appalachian, either because of family history or a genuine love for the area. Appalachia covers 206,000 miles over 13 states and 423 counties. The state of West Virginia is entirely consumed by this region, and some of the creepy facts I have stem right from this place. The other 12 states it covers are Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky, Maryland, Mississippi, New York, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. Appalachia is like an iceberg. The top part is what we know and what we've seen throughout history. The bottom half is more of the legends, the stuff we generally don't see, and things we can't even comprehend. This story is so large that I honestly could start a whole new podcast just to cover every inch of it. If we took a quick look at history, the starting point would be thousands of years ago to the very first Paleo Native Americans that lived and cultivated the land, and over time evolving into tribes like the Cherokee of the South, as well as the Shawnee and the Muskogee of the central and northern regions. This also includes the Iroquois Confederacy, the Susquehannock, and the Mohicans. It also has a lot of history involving the Civil War, during and after the conflict. One example is the Hatfield and McCoy family feud that was violently fought throughout the remote areas of Appalachia. Some reasons were due to Civil War alliances, the value of timberland, some failed romances, and even a stolen hog. This mini war was done in the Tug Valley Mountains on the border of Kentucky, West Virginia border. During the economical boom, the Virginia state was housing many lumber mills for new railroads. Also, there was many coal mines, most popular in West Virginia, with successful and tragic tales. Of all its history comes tales that make Appalachia not only beautiful, but terrifying as well, as a lot of Appalachians would tell you there are rules to living in these areas, if you believe the stories. So, I want to do right now is to tell you about these claims in these sections, starting with the most important, the rules. Then we'll explore the origins of the claims and some of the famous cryptids that are known to roam in these woods. So let's begin with why you should follow the rules, or else. To make sure you survive your trip in Appalachia, there are a few rules that one should remember. These are the most common that I found during my research, so they're more like guidelines, I guess, than actual rules. I'll go into detail with each one and explain what they mean and what I think of them. So let's start with the first one. Never whistle at night. Whistling is believed to attract negative energy, evil spirits, and other supernatural beings to you. Indigenous tribes have believed this for generations, making others aware of the dangers. I believe this is something to consider, whether it attracts supernatural entities or not. If one was alone at night, it's not a good idea to make your location known. Whistling can attract animals to you, like bears or coyotes. We also know that people can be truly scary, especially in these woods. I also learned recently from a friend that this rule also is in the Indian culture. They believe it brings bad karma, whistling in the evening or nighttime. The next rule is do not answer your name or at the sound of being called over or called to attention. Regardless if it's day or night, in these parts one could hear something call your name. It's believed if one hears their own name with no one around, whatever it is doesn't have good intentions. This could be the cause of a person, spirits, or even creatures like the skinwalkers. Creatures known to mimic human speech to lure people to them. You could also hear something calling for you. Examples like, hey, come here, hello, or even help. Regardless, one shouldn't investigate this if you're alone in Appalachia. Number 3 is don't look up into the trees. Some legends say creatures, spirits, or other entities can lurk in the canopy. Can you imagine taking a nice hike through these woods and then having the feeling you're being watched? You look above you only to see eyes in the shape of something ready to drop down. This rule tends to apply for the nighttime as well, as our eyes are known to play tricks on us. It is known that when one gets psyched out, our eyes can produce shapes. It's our brain trying to make human shapes when everything is dark. Number 4. Silence is a warning. If the forest goes dead quiet, that's a warning for you to be aware of your surroundings. For example, if you're hiking and you hear the birds and the bugs all go silent, all you hear is your heartbeat, that's a warning. Now, it could generally be a grizzly bear or a mountain lion in the area. Regardless, you need to be ready to be silent and prepared to be still so one does not alert that predator to you. In saying that, these animals do have a great scent, so you could already be fucked. But, just in case, be ready for action if you see the signs. Skinwalkers are also known to silence the area. This would make it easier for you to hear their call. If things go silent and you hear your name, the best thing to do is turn around and run like hell. Lastly, number 5. Never leave a marked trail. This one is pretty straightforward. Marked trails have been groomed for hikers so they don't trip or get lost. If you leave these trails, it's very easy to get lost, especially in Appalachia. Google a picture of the mountain range to get an idea. Trying to be found out here is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Stay safe, my friends. I think overall, these are good survival rules regardless where you hike. Have common sense when you're out here. It's more often than not stupidity will kill you over something supernatural. In saying that, let's now dive into the creepy section of this story. I want you to know about a few famous creatures that are known to be in these parts. Come sit down by the campfire and let me tell you some of Appalachia's famous monsters. Let's start with our first cryptid, a monster known around these parts of Braxton County in West Virginia. This is the Flatwoods Monster. It was first spotted on the night of September 12, 1952, when two brothers, Edward and Fred May, with their friend Tommy Heyer, were watching a bright object cross the night sky. The trio then followed it and noticed it landed around a neighboring farm. When they shined their flashlights around the area, they spotted a figure about 10 feet tall with glowing eyes. It was later described as having a dark or green metallic skirt-like body, a blood-red face, orange glowing eyes, and a spade-shaped-like head. It was believed that the Flatwoods Monster could have been an alien, and the bright light in the sky was its ship crash landing. When the group found this creature, it made a loud hissing noise, and the group fled in fear. Theories suggest what the trio had seen was a meteorite, and the creature was likely a barn owl. Regardless of what they seen, the story of the Flatwoods Monster grew in popularity. The town of Flatwoods has a sign welcoming guests stating, "Home of the Green Monster." If you were to head to the town hall, you could see a 10-foot figure of the monster with a chair built in front of it for guests to take photos. The Flatwoods Monster is freaky to look at if you were to Google some pictures, but not nearly as creepy as some of the rest. This next one is called knot deer. They're skinwalker-like creatures famous for lurking throughout Appalachia, especially nowadays. People have claimed to see a deer-like animal standing on their hind legs and showing no fear in humans. When these so-called knot deer get close, one could see them walk with glitchy movements. Their joints are disjointed and with a cow-like head. They're supposed to represent a white-tailed deer, but they're just wrong. Sometimes even described to have many eyes, make weird, horrific noises, and act aggressive to people. They seem to come from the myths of skinwalkers or even wendigos from native folklore. Skinwalkers are shape-shifting witches from the Navajo culture, changing into animals to lure people for harm. These knot deer are theorized to be real deer, but suffering from a scientific term called chronic wasting disease, which causes emasculation, neurological issues, and the strange, fearless behavior. This also could be a form of rabies as well. Regardless of this case, if you see a deer out there that doesn't seem normal, whether supernatural or just sick, you should keep your distance and contact the proper authorities. The most famous Appalachian cryptid is my personal favorite. It's been spotted around Point Pleasant, West Virginia. This is the famous Mothman, often described as a large humanoid creature, 6 to 7 feet tall with grayish skin and about human-sized. It's claimed to have a 10-foot long wingspan and is able to fly at speeds without even flapping its wings. It was first spotted between November 1966 to December 1967, before and after the time when the Silver Bridge collapsed. On December 15, 1967, the Silver Bridge collapsed due to structural failure during peak rush hour. 46 people were killed, 9 others were injured, and 2 of the bodies were never found. There was about 37 cars on the bridge at the time. 31 of those cars fell into the freezing waters of the Ohio River. The 1,460-foot-long bridge collapsed in less than 20 seconds. This was due to a microscopic crack about 0.1 inch deep in one of the eye bar joints, and it was because of corrosion fatigue. Now, how does Mothman tie into this? Well, it's thought he was a warning Point Pleasant of the incident. A giant black shape was often seen flying around the area before and during the incident. there was at least 100 reported sightings of Mothman. Most consider him a herald of doom. Its warning could have saved the bridge, whereas others think of him as a harbinger of doom, as it's Mothman's fault for the bridge collapsing. Regardless of which one you may think, his legacy lives on. If you were to visit Point Pleasant, you would be greeted by a 12-foot chrome statue dedicated to Mothman. It also has his famous red eyes and is a popular tourist attraction. There's also an annual festival in September every year with live music, vendors, contests, and more. It draws in at least 15,000 people each year. As of today, there are still reported sightings of the cryptid. I believe that Mothman is real, and that it's a protector of the Appalachia region. So if you get a chance to visit Point Pleasant, you may even spot him in the sky. For this last story, it's not a cryptid, but it's definitely something spooky. If one was to head to Brown Mountain in North Carolina on a clear fall evening, one could see glowing orbs in the sky. Described as glowing, flickering, or exploding balls of fire in the colors of blue, yellow, red, or even white, sometimes individually or in big groups. These lights are at least 100 years old, and the first reported sightings date back to 1910. It's said the best time to view these lights are at Wiseman's View, an overlook on Brown Mountain, and also at another location called Blue Ridge Parkway. But what are they? Some say spirits, others say natural gas. The scientific theory is that they could be a few things. Some of them are geological gas emissions, balls of lightning, or even light refractions from distant trains, cars, or light pollution from distant cities. The folklore legends claim they could be ghost lights from indigenous women looking for lost warriors. Some even say they could be the spirit of a famous moonshiner. Whatever they are creepy to watch. There's many videos on YouTube, and I've watched a few of these clips, and I myself am unsure of what they could be. I would love to see these someday. All these stories just scratch the surface of Appalachia. There's so many more weird and spooky things happening here. Every state seems to have their own cryptid. Most seem to be easily explained, and some harder to figure out. Mothman and the Flatwoods are my two favorite that I believe are harder to explain. Regardless if you believe this or not, you should still follow the rules to make sure your trip is safe. Even if there isn't anything supernatural going on, you have to be realistic of the dangers of nature and other people. As I said in this episode and past episodes, people are the scariest thing on this planet, especially in the Appalachian Mountains. I hope you enjoy these tales, and I hope you get to explore Appalachia yourself one day, discover its many mysteries, and come home to tell about them. Next week there won't be an episode, as I'm taking a week off, my very own March break. Over my break I plan on relaxing and working on some big stories that are coming soon. For example, I have a few multi-part series in the works. The first one will be arriving in a couple weeks. I want to shift this podcast to bigger and much longer stories, so there will be a mix of single episodes and 3-parters. But for now, let's get ready for episode 20. When I get back on March 21st, this story is the one that started this whole journey. This tale brings us back to Halifax, Nova Scotia, and connects a few locations to some moments in history. It's also connected to my very first episode of this show. These locations I'll be covering also have some spooky resonance, but we'll be exploring that very soon. So, I'll see you soon. Sweet dreams, and remember, nightmares are closer than you think.